Hey there, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of In the Kitchen with Vincent. Yo, it is so hard to believe that we are already on our third episode, but thank you for tuning in, and for today we got something special for you. Today I'm going to be making my baked apple barbecue ribs. We're going to make some country kale with some sweet potatoes, and you know we got to have some sweet Mississippi cornbread on the side. So y'all, sit back, relax, and welcome to In the Kitchen with Vincent. Alrighty, everybody, let's get the thing that's going to take the longest to cook started, our spare ribs. So y'all, I've already cleaned and washed my spare ribs, removed that membrane, and made sure I trimmed the fat. So it's ready for applying that seasoning, and I also made sure I patted it dry and I set it aside to cool. And for our rub today, let me tell you what we're going to be doing for this rub. So we're going to do 1/4 a cup of packed brown sugar, 1 tablespoon of your favorite Creole seasoning, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of black pepper. You're going to want to do a tablespoon and a half of minced garlic, and a half of a teaspoon of dried parsley. And to that, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, or however you say it. You know, everybody says it differently, but you know what I'm talking about. That good W sauce right here. And we're going to mix that in. And you want to make sure it's really good and mixed in, nice and evenly distributed in. Alrighty. Now once you get that, it should be looking something like that. It's going to look like a little like soupy little mix. And what you're going to actually do with that, I have 1 cup of apple juice here. I'm going to add that seasoning to my apple juice. Awesome. Alrighty, and I'm going to give that a mix, and once we have that all mixed in, I'll be right back. Alrighty, y'all, so we got the sauce all good and mixed in, and when you finish, it'll look something like this. And we have our ribs. So I cut my spare ribs in half so that I could place it in a baking dish, because not too many of us have a baking dish big enough for a whole slab of ribs. So I cut them in half, and what I'm going to do first to these ribs, I'm going to lather them down with some mustard, and it's just used as a little bit of a binder. So just going to hit it up top a little bit, flip it over. I'm going to hit that a little bit, hit this back side a little bit, and take my brush here. Just ain't got to be perfect. You just need to make sure you hit it. Hit it, hit it, hit it. See, yeah, that's already looking pretty good. Awesome, I need to flip it. Ugh. Awesome, now I hit the back. And y'all, since the mix, the marinade that we're going to be cooking the ribs in has already got so much of that seasoning packed in there, we don't have to season these ribs much. But what we will do, we will hit them just lightly with some Tony's Creole, because you know I like to always be able to taste it. You got to have some flavor to know that it's there. Alright, so once I get this mustard fully hit the way I want it to, alright, it's looking alright, y'all. I'm going to take this Tony's and we're just going to lightly hit it. Ever so slightly. So I'll take that other half, that slab. Righty. Alrighty, and that looks good to me. So now, y'all, I have some diced up apples. So I'm going to take half of these diced up apples and I'm just going to drop them in my baking pan. Just spreading them out all evenly. Awesome. And now, y'all, we're going to take that sauce that we made and we're going to pour half of that sauce down in there. Awesome. And now I want to make sure that that sauce is hit all those apples because we're going to lay those ribs down in there. So you want to make sure that the apples are in that liquid and that your ribs are going to be resting in that liquid as well. Awesome, that's looking good. So I'm going to slide my ribs in there. Alrighty, you know, you got to get your hands a little dirty to make some good ribs, y'all. Got to get your hands a little dirty. So we're going to slide the rest of those apples in just to top it. Yeah. And just watch, those apples are going to be used later in our sauce a little bit too. Once we are ready to sear those ribs, we're going to take the apples and we're going to show you what we're going to do with them. It's going to be delicious. And you're going to take the rest of your sauce and you're just going to hit the top of those ribs and making sure that you wet everything. Yep. Awesome. Oh my goodness, that looks so good, y'all. Let me pick it up so you can see it. Oh, it's a little heavy. Alrighty, y'all, so now our oven is preset to 400 degrees. We got our ribs wrapped and ready to go. So we're going to place them in the oven for about 3 to 4 hours. It depends on how tender you want your ribs. If you want to fall off the bone, they're going to be tender regardless. But if you want them to fall off the bone or if you want them to still be on the bone, you want to start watching them at about 3 hours or so. Alrighty, y'all, so now we got those ribs in the oven and they're going to be in the oven for the next about 2 to 3 hours and then we'll give them a check. But now we got to get started on our sides. So y'all, one of my favorite sides is just a good old baked sweet potato. And this is how I make mine. So I got 5 sweet potatoes already diced up and ready to go. A half of a stick of salted butter. I have 1 cup of white sugar, a 1/4 cup of light brown sugar, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. So y'all, the way I like to approach my sweet potatoes, I do it in like a lasagna style. I just like to stack and make sure that my sweet potatoes have that sugar on every layer. So I do a layer of sweet potatoes, I do a layer of sugar, I add some butter, and I just continue that process until I get all the way to the top. So I'm going to do that and I won't belabor y'all with having to watch it, and when we get to the end, I'll let you see what it looks like. Alrighty, everybody, I got my sweet potatoes all squared away and this is what it will look like. And the last thing I have to do now is add over my vanilla extract. So I'm just going to pour that teaspoon of vanilla extract over. Just making sure it's just evenly across the top there. And the thing about it is when I bake it, so I'm going to cover it with aluminum foil. And as it bakes, the sugar and the butter are going to begin to boil up, so that vanilla flavor will get evenly through the sweet potatoes. So don't worry about having to waste a whole tablespoon of vanilla extract to get that vanilla flavor in your sweet potatoes. Don't worry, it will be there. Alrighty, so now I am going to bake my sweet potatoes in the oven with my ribs. So the ribs are set on 400, so the sweet potatoes will go in there on 400. I will let them bake for like an hour or so and they should be done and we'll check back with them. But then we got to get ready on these country kale greens-ish things. Y'all, I love kale and I love greens, but you know, I love finding ways to make things that are nutritious in the kitchen also have a southern country not so nutritious flair. So y'all, sit back and enjoy these country kale. Alrighty, y'all, so now we got all of our ingredients for our country kale. I cleaned and washed my country kale. So y'all, with my kale, I make sure I give it a good wash with baking soda, some vinegar, and some water. Wash and rinse until it comes out clean and clear. So it's all clean. I have 3 thick cuts of bacon, and I've cut that up. And in my seasonings, I have 2 cups of, not 2 cups, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 tablespoon of your favorite Creole seasoning, a half a tablespoon of chicken bouillon, a half a tablespoon of onion powder, and a tablespoon of black pepper. And then over here, I have 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, 1 chopped up yellow onion, and we're about to meet me at the stove so we can get this kale cooking. Alrighty, y'all, so now I have my pot set on medium-high heat, and I have my bacon. I'm going to add it to the pot. Oh yeah, it's already sizzling. Awesome. And y'all, I'm just going to get this bacon browned and crumbly, and once it's browned and cooked, I will remove it, and once we get to that point, we'll be right back. Alrighty, y'all, so now our bacon is pretty much as brown as I want it to be at this point. So I'm just going to grab it and set it aside so it can drain. Just grab some paper towel and a little bowl or something just to grab it. Set it to the side. Y'all, it has my kitchen smelling so fragrant right now between this bacon and the ribs in the oven. It smells good in here, y'all. Alrighty, so once I get all that out, I'll be right back. Alrighty, y'all, so now that I got all my bacon drained and set aside, I have my onions and this bacon grease. I'm going to toss those onions in and cook them until they're translucent. So this normally only takes about a minute or 2. So after that it's ready, I'll be right back. Alrighty, y'all, so now my onions are just about translucent. So now I'm going to take my chicken stock and I'm going to add just a whole bottle of chicken stock into it. And be careful with that so it doesn't splash and that grease pop up on you. Awesome. And for me, y'all, at this point, those seasonings that I showed you earlier, I go ahead and drop those seasonings in. So as my chicken stock begins to pick up temperature, it begins to boil, the seasonings and everything starts to boil into the broth as well before I add my kale in. So I'm going to get that going and we'll be right back. Alrighty, y'all, so now my broth is at a simmer and smelling so good. So now I'm going to add in my 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. Keep it nice and fragrant. And we can begin to toss in that kale. And I'm just going to toss it all in because we're going to allow it to cook down. So I'm going to toss it all in and try not to make too much of a mess here. Oop, dropped a little bit. But it's alright, I got plenty, so everything don't have to make the pot. Alrighty, I'll grab that. Alrighty. So y'all, I approach this pretty much like greens, and I just allow it to cook down. And cooking down sometimes can take between 30 to 40 minutes, but you just watch it and make sure you keep stirring it. But in the meantime, we're going to watch these, I almost said we're going to watch these greens, but we're going to watch this kale, and then we're going to get our cornbread ready. So y'all, my kale has only been cooking for about 10 minutes now, and it's cooking down a little faster than I thought it may, but I did have it cranked up pretty high. But since it's cooking down so fast, I'm going to go ahead and add those bacon bits back in. Yeah, because once you get to the point to where your kale is baked, I mean it's cooked down, and it starts to give that green look, you want to go ahead and add that bacon in. So maybe for double the recipe, which is what I've said in my cookbook, you would wait about 30 to 40 minutes. But if you're going to do the size of kale, which I did about 3 bunches, you're going to actually wait about 15 minutes before adding that bacon, 10 to 15 minutes before adding that bacon back in. And then you're going to put it back on, you're going to put that lid back on, and you're going to let it simmer for another 10 minutes or so. Alrighty, y'all. So now our last thing to get ready is our cornbread. So I have 1 cup of self-rising cornmeal I'm going to add to this large mixing bowl. 1 cup of flour. Awesome. 1/3 a cup of sugar. 1/2 of a tablespoon of salt. And a 1/2 stick of butter. Yep. 1/2 a cup of milk, y'all. And I'm going to take 1 egg. We're going to crack that egg. Set it aside. And we're going to give it a mix. Alrighty, y'all. So initially I put a 1/2 a cup of milk into my cornbread mix, but it's not as loose as I want it to be. I want it to be a little loose, not completely soupy, but I'm going to add probably about another 1/4 of a cup of milk in it just so that it can have the consistency that I want it to have, so I can make sure it's going to come out the way that I want it to. Alrighty, y'all, that ended up being the perfect amount of milk. So now I'm going to add it to my buttered pan, and then I'm going to stick it in the oven for about 30 to 35 minutes. And I'm going to watch it, y'all. I have it set on 350. And these ribs are about to come out, and we're about to get to making that barbecue sauce so that we can get that sear going. And once I put this in the oven and we get those ribs out, we'll be right back. Alrighty, y'all, so our ribs have been cooking in the oven for about 4 hours, so I just took them out, and now we're going to take them out and sit those ribs aside and start pulling those apples and that juice out. Oh, it smells so good. Whew. Oh, and it looks good too. Let me, ooh wee. Oh, it's so, oh my goodness, it's falling apart. It's so tender. Well, that's half of a slab. half of a slab. Oh my gosh, the tips are falling apart, man. It's so tender. Alrighty, y'all, so now I have my rendered down apples from my ribs, and my ribs are right now searing in the oven. So I'm going to put them in the skillet on medium heat. And they smell so good, y'all. Those seasonings and that pork, oh, and the apples, it just smells amazing. And right here, I have a cup of apple juice I'm going to add to this. I have 1/3 a cup of ketchup I'm going to add. And then I have 1/3 a cup of brown sugar I'm going to also add in. Alrighty, y'all, so we're going to give that a mix until it starts to simmer and thicken up, and then we'll be right back. Alrighty, y'all, so my sauce has reached its desired consistency. You just want it to be able to like lather and actually come up off of a spatula so that you know when you get it on your ribs it's going to actually lather. So that's how you make your homemade barbecue sauce, and I'm about to show you how you get it ready to put back in the oven with your ribs, which have been in the oven just getting a nice little sear on it. So now we're going to get the ribs and the barbecue sauce together. Alrighty, y'all, so now we got all of our sides out of the oven, and now we got our seared ribs and our homemade barbecue sauce. Now it's just time to get that barbecue sauce on our ribs and in the oven for a little bit. And I just started off, so y'all, the ribs are so fall off the bone tender, so I'm gonna lay just a little bit of that barbecue sauce down in our baking pan again, just so I don't have to try to lather the bottom, but rather I'm just going to let them submerge into that barbecue sauce, and it'll give it a good lather. Y'all, that homemade barbecue sauce with those apples smells so good. Okay, so just going to lay my ribs back in there. And y'all, that sear helped them get some of that body back so they're not just falling apart, and you can actually get a bite off of it. So that's going to be really essential and very tasty. Ooh, but you see, they're still tender. They're tender, y'all. Alrighty. So now, I'm going to take the rest of that sauce and lay it over top. And then you take your brush and just make sure it lathers well. Alrighty, and once you get that completely lathered over, you're going to put your ribs back in the oven for about 5 to 10 minutes on 400, just so that that barbecue sauce can caramelize on it. And then I can show y'all what this delicious meal is looking like. Alrighty, y'all, so we are done cooking today. We have our country kale, our sweet potatoes, our apple baked barbecue ribs, and our Mississippi sweet corn. I just want you to be able to get a look-see at it. Just look at those. Oh, that country kale looks so good. And let me get those sweet potatoes. Everything's still pretty hot. Sweet potatoes. And of course, oh, that just came out of the oven, so I really don't want to burn myself there, but those ribs with that homemade barbecue sauce, and of course, that good old cornbread. So y'all, it has been some hours in the kitchen. I am hungry, so it's time to dig in. But thank you for joining, and thank you for tuning in for another episode of In the Kitchen with Vincent. I'm so grateful and blessed to have you with me, and I hope we stick around for many, many more episodes to come. Y'all have a blessed one.